Mandla, what inspired you to address the topic of a leader's self-belief in your book, Conquer Your Mountains?
Amanda, yeah, thanks for that question. Week 36 talked about unbelief, and it says, whether preparing to speak in front of a crowd or getting ready to run a marathon, unbelief can be my greatest hindrance. Unbelief stops me from preparing because I simply can't believe I will make it anyway. Unbelief slows me down when the race gets going because I don't believe I'm fast enough. When any plan is made, first subtract unbelief from that plan. Yeah, so that inspiration led me to think that the biggest question we should be asking is if we believed in ourselves fractionally more, whether it's 1 or 10% more, could we achieve more than we are currently achieving? And if we believe even more in higher power that is looking out for us, could we achieve even exponentially more than we could with our own power? So it's really about finding the factors that hold us back from achieving our greatest purpose.
Do you have an example of where unbelief hindered someone's progress that you could share with us?
Yes, so I was looking at a few examples, and the one that struck me was the famous artist Vincent van Gogh. I'm sure you know of him or you know of his works.
Absolutely. One of my favorites is the Starry Night one.
Yes. So the interesting thing is that when he was alive, he only sold one painting.
Wow.
And he used to struggle. He doubted himself. He had mental issues. He wasn't always confident of his abilities and whether he would be accepted. And we find that he made over 2,100 artworks. And despite that, a lot of the good stuff that he had done was only recognized after he was dead. So yeah, and that was quite an unfortunate life of unbelief. Look, I can't speak for what exactly held him back from succeeding during his lifetime, but you do wonder whether a different approach might have seen him reap the fruits of his labor whilst he was alive. But look, having said that, even though he's gone, we still have his artwork, so I don't think the world lost out. But of not being able to see the fruits of your input, when I looked at that example, it did seem quite difficult to swallow.
Yeah, I think you could probably look at it both ways because it was perhaps unbelief in himself and perhaps unbelief in him by other people, but also he never stopped painting. He carried on painting. So there must have been some smidgen of belief in him that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. That's an
Yes,
interesting combination of things that happened there.
yes. And I do like the angle that you throw in terms of it could have been unbelief by other people. And I think it does show that unbelief can be twofold. Believe in yourself firstly, but the other challenge is to get others to believe in you.
And in your work, yes.
Yes.
So, so what strategies do you recommend for business leaders to combat self-doubt and renew their self-belief in what they're doing and what they're putting out there?
If I stick with the Vincent example, even though he was battling, he used art as a form of healing himself. It helped him to process his emotions and what he was going through mentally. So even though art symbolized what he wasn't achieving at that time, it also became a tool which kept that smidgen of self-belief going. Because you are right, Amanda. Clearly, because he carried on, he must have believed that there was still more that he could add to society. even though he hadn't been accepted yet. So I think for business leaders, it's finding out what are those routines or therapies or habits that help to push away self-doubt. And Vincent van Gogh also did self-portraits, and it was a way of looking into himself. Yeah, so that was quite a direct way of looking at his self-doubt. And ultimately, even though he never realized what he wanted to realize fully, he didn't give up. And I think for leaders, I think it's a great story about just being tireless in persisting in what you believe is a good and rightful thing for you to be doing. It doesn't mean that you always have to do the same thing if it's not working. Sometimes you need to change your plans to what the market or other people are saying back to you.
So, how can leaders, and I think actually everybody, identify and address the root cause of their unbelief?
I think the root cause, it starts by addressing the symptoms. So where is it that I'm getting resistance? What are the areas where I'm feeling like I'm trying to achieve something? I'm trying to set up new products and make sure they're profitable, but I'm not getting any good feedback from the market. So it's to identify those symptoms. And then the root causes, if you now believe that you have a certain level of doubt and unbelief, the root causes could be fairly deep. So it could be that you've had a whole series of setbacks in a row. And even for the most successful people, once you've got countless setbacks, I was watching the Olympics recently, you get top athletes that have prepared for 4 years, and on race day, something happens. Those sort of events can trigger unbelief. But it's about saying, hang on, I've been doing this for 4 years. I've actually had successes. This was just a once-off thing, or this is something that can be fixed. So it's digging deep to find what is the root cause and what can I do about it.
So, we've touched on preparation out there when you spoke about the athletes who does that for 4 years before the event. What role does preparation play in building self-belief, and how can leaders ensure that they are adequately prepared?
The preparation, I think, is about trying to match the real expectations that you face on the day that you have to perform. So for an athlete, for example, you could have been practicing at empty stadiums for 4 years because you're not going to simulate being in a stadium quite often with well, with 80,000 people watching you do a high jump or long jump or 100-meter sprint. And if you're underprepared, you might be fully prepared in one aspect. So in this case, the athlete has got enough strength and stamina to complete that physical routine, but they could be underprepared for one aspect, and that aspect could be the fact that there's a stadium with 80,000 people either cheering or not cheering, and that could dismantle all the good work that they've been working on. So it's about preparing for all the different angles that a situation can throw at you. It could be that it will be raining on that day. So maybe in your preparation, include a few practices where you practice in rainy conditions or in very hot conditions. It's really about think of all the different scenarios that could hamper your plan. And when you've worked through all the scenarios and prepared for them, when something happens on that performance day and it doesn't go according to plan, you've got a much deeper bucket of resources that you can dig into.
Okay, so we talked about the importance of preparation and perseverance, but like you just said, bad things happen. So how can business leaders maintain their self-belief during challenging times or when they're facing setbacks?
A lot of what I was talking about is around what leaders can do internally. But during challenging times, you often need to tap into community because that's the role that community serves. That's why in any business, there's very few people that work in a business by themselves. Often you'll have 2, 3, 4, or 100 people that are working with you. And that can solve for the area that you are struggling to find an answer to. So if I think back to the Vincent van Gogh example, with the 2,100 paintings that died without being sold, I'd wonder if he had a modern day marketing team, that would have been a different outcome.
I think they left when he cut off his ear.
Yes, yes, yeah, and he was, but I think it comes with that industry. I think sometimes you have to be a bit of a maverick to
Yes.
succeed. But I think it's about finding out where you can get other people to help you in that area that you are battling with, because no one is perfect. And the area that you have unbelief about, it could be false, but it could be true. It could be true that you are not good at that area. And a leader can rise above that and say, if I can't solve it with my own capacity, let me find someone else that can walk the rest of this journey with me.
I like that, going back to basics and relying on community and support, because I think, especially like with Vincent van Gogh, he had to have people around him that supported him in more ways than one. So that's interesting. So as we close, I wonder if we can fully address our self-belief. What if you work towards a certain outcome and it doesn't work no matter how hard you try?
You need to look at the emotional toll of that thing that you are working towards, because sometimes it's something that can be solved, but it needs a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you're maybe fishing in the wrong sea or the wrong river. So you can't keep on doing the same thing if it's not giving you results and if it's destroying you internally. And you do occasionally have to change and pivot and do something different. But before you make a drastic change, I think it's good to do a dipstick and just see if you've exhausted all avenues.
I like that idea. Sometimes it's okay to move on to something else if it's not working. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amanda de Witt, and I'm the senior editor at Luca, the faith and inspiration imprint of Penguin Random House, South Africa.
And I'm Mandla Moyo, the author of an inspirational book called Conquer Your Mountains, as well as a science fiction book called The Fallen Angel.
Thank you, Dr. Mandla.
Thanks, Amanda. Catch soon.